So given this future, how do we think about innovating in this world? Now, my proposition to you is that this may feel like a very idealistic future, but when we think about innovation in this world, we actually have a lot to learn from in terms of what's happening in emerging markets. So let me start from the beginning of our process, which is the search for insights. We start our process by looking for inspiration, and inspiration tends to come from insights about a consumer. Right? So how do we go about understanding consumers? A lot of people who practice innovation will tell you that we start with a research process that is based on ethnography, which is the study of human behaviors. So we will go into the field and we will talk to people and we will live with them and learn from them and learn what their needs are, what their behaviors are, and use that as inspiration for new ideas. Now, at Frog, we like to take a highly immersive approach to research, because what we've learned is that going into the home and talking to people for a few hours isn't often enough. And particularly in understanding markets that are very different from our clients' worlds, to truly uncover insights that will inspire, we need to go deeper. So we will live immersively. We won't go stay in hotels when we travel to an area, but we will rent a home in the community that we're studying, and we will spend weeks there living, breathing, studying the consumer all day. We will commute locally, try to travel at every opportunity we can to see how technology is used in every context on your morning commute, when you have a break at work, when people come home in the evening. Here's me trying to blend in Nigeria, where I was last summer. But we will try to actually move out of the formal constructs of we are now professionals and we now go and interview you for 2 hours. And instead, we will try to look for opportunities to learn from people by living in the community itself. So we will talk to people we see on the streets. We will intercept them when we see a group of people together. We will go join people at restaurants when they're eating, and we will try to penetrate the local community as much as possible to learn. Right? We will also daily, on a regular basis, we will take everything we've learned and use it as a springboard for ideation. Right? So let's try to brainstorm about ideas when we're there in the field, rather than taking it home to when we're done with research weeks later. And the goal of all of this, I want to give you an example of why this research is so important, is when we think about innovation, we often need to understand the user in the most authentic way possible. So we were doing a program where we were trying to understand, come up with ideas for innovative home cleaning and home organizational products. Now, if I asked you, how would you go about studying this market, you'd say, let's go into people's homes and talk to them. Let's see how they organize their homes, how they clean. Right? Now, I would tell you, if you actually do that, it's going to be impossible for you to get good results, because there's no way you can step into someone's home and observe how they clean and how they keep their home organized without introducing extreme bias, because no one's going to let you go into their home and see how naturally dirty they keep it. Right? It's just natural human tendency is that if a guest comes, even if we tell them, do not clean your home, we want to see how you live, you're going to clean it, at least somewhat. Right? And so we need to get into people's homes and see it naturally. So we do what's called the hustle. Right? Here's my colleague Ihan. She's approached 3 guys sitting at a cafe, and she just starts talking to them. She makes some small talk and determines that one of the guys has a girlfriend who lives nearby, gets invited to his place with the research team, and we're able to step in and see his girlfriend's home as she lives. And this is fascinating, right? There are so many things here going on that are very impressive to us as researchers. There's some things that are very organized, there's some things that are not organized. There's some things that she has purchased and some things she has not purchased in terms of home organization products. There's some things that she spent a lot of money on, some solutions here, and some things she's improvised and shares with her roommates. So all of this gives us insights into how she thinks about cleaning and home organization. It helps us better understand her needs and behaviors and then turn that into ideas. Right? And this is something that is so core to innovation, this search for the right insight. Now, here's a product that I'm sure none of you have ever seen. It's called Iran Iban. It's a tablet. It's the #2 selling tablet in China. Okay? And it's more expensive than the iPad, which is the #1 selling tablet. Right? Now, this is a product that we created at Frog. And what's interesting about it is it may not look, by the standards of what we're used to when we look at tablets, it may not look that beautiful. What it's actually doing is it's targeted towards Chinese businessmen. And we spent a lot of time studying how these large government meetings take place. And we observed that so many people are really reliant on their old diaries. Right? These diaries are still used. It's a very kind of old, kind of Chinese-style diaries that are used to keep track of every little thing. And so we said, let's use the metaphor of a diary with the stylus as a way to create a tablet experience, rather than use the conventional kind of iPad or Android kind of folder-based metaphors that you see that define the overall interaction model of the experience. And this stylus and notebook metaphor, which seems so dated by many standards, actually is exactly the way that many Chinese businessmen prefer to organize their lives. And this has been hugely successful, and it really is that one insight that led to the entire design of this concept. Sometimes those insights come from the very beginning, and sometimes we have to spend weeks digging and researching to come up with that insight that is so new and different that inspires the big idea. Now, I want to give you another story about China that gets to something that happens a little bit later in our process. So, it's one of the things that really struck me when I moved there was how so many of my colleagues who are Chinese and don't speak English were somehow able to have conversations with me about the latest episodes of US TV shows like Lost, that were really popular a couple years ago, literally hours after they were broadcast in the US. And they don't speak English, right? So I wondered how this happened, and as we started digging deeper, we found this fascinating phenomenon where a broadcast would end, it's hard to see here, but at 10 p.m. in the US. The video file is uploaded within 15 minutes and then downloaded to China. The English subtitles are completed by the US team and then uploaded. Then a China team downloads that and synchronizes that to the video. Then a lead translator, along with 4 supporting translators, starts translating every line of the text. Right? A few hours later, the draft translation is finished. The lead translator conducts the quality review. Then a couple hours later, the QA is complete. The Chinese translation is uploaded to a sharing site. Then tech-savvy fans, they download it. They embed it in the US video file. Then they release that as a torrent, and then bootleg versions of the bootleg start getting released with advertising that is then sold to TV vendors. Right? So it's a pretty impressive, very, very rapid life cycle for basically pirating US media. Now, what's interesting is, I'm sure you've all seen scenes like this. This is when I was in Nigeria last year. You go to the electronics markets and you see all types of these, what we call in China, shanzai phones, right? These are the knockoff phones. Now, years ago, we would laugh at them when we saw the first iPhones, right? Because they had a backwards Apple logo, and they didn't really have a touch screen. And you're like, come on, who are you kidding here? This is obviously not an iPhone. Are people actually spending money on this? But now you see some really good ones. I was about to buy this triple SIM card BlackBerry, right? Let's keep 3 numbers in it, really impressive. Made by a Chinese company. Now, what happened was just a year ago, when the iPad first came out, or not more than a year ago at this point, we tracked how long will it take for the first knockoff iPad to come out. 19 days. Okay? Now, and it's Android based, and it looks really good. And now, what's interesting is we have our clients at Frog are some of the leading consumer electronics brands in the world, who we all know. And when we talk to them about new products, new innovations that are going to be, the iPod or the iPad killers that will come out later on, we're talking 2 to 3 year time frames, right? And here we're looking at a 19-day design and development cycle. Right? Now, this is a truly stunning kind of gap. Now, obviously, this is a derivative product, right? It is taking a design language that is already established, and it is extending it, and they definitely had a head start because they probably had a good sense of what the iPad would look like before it came out. But there is something interesting about this time frame, and if we look at this as a provocation, right? What happens if 21 days actually becomes your target go-to-market timeline rather than 2 to 3 years? what does that mean for your business in terms of how you have to think about acting? One of the things we've seen is just the pace at which companies in China are willing to work. And it's much more akin to a startup, an entrepreneurial style of product development than what we're used to in many large corporations.